The first time I saw the foreclosure notice tacked to my sister's front door, I felt something inside me shift forever. That piece of paper, flapping in the breeze, represented the end of a journey that began 5 years earlier with the simple promise to help my parents. I remember sitting at their kitchen table back then, the smell of my mother's meatloaf filling the air. Dad's hands, once so strong from years of carpentry work, trembled slightly as he showed me the bank statements. "The business has been slow," he'd said, not meeting my eyes. "The mortgage company isn't being understanding." My mother had reached across the table, her hand covering mine. "Just until we get back on our feet, honey. Maybe a year, tops." That was 2018. I was 38 years old, renting a small apartment downtown while working as an office manager. The first payment felt good. $1,200 sent electronically to their mortgage company. I was helping. I was the responsible one. Month after month, year after year, the payments continued. When my car needed new tires, I put it on a credit card. When my friends went on vacation, I stayed home. I told myself this was what family did for each other. Then came Sarah's wedding. My little sister, the one who'd never held a job for more than 6 months, was marrying a man she'd known for 8 weeks. The wedding cost more than my first house would have. I helped with that too. Another $5,000 from my savings to pay for the flowers, the cake, the band. Mom said it was important for Sarah to have the perfect day. The ceremony was beautiful. Sarah looked like a princess in her designer gown. I stood beside her in my bridesmaid's dress, smiling until my face hurt. Then came the reception. The champagne flowed, the band played, and my father stood up to make his speech. He talked about love, about family, about new beginnings. Then he dropped the bomb. To help our beautiful Sarah and her wonderful husband start their lives together, we're giving them our house, free and clear. The room exploded in applause. People cheered. Sarah screamed with delight and threw her arms around our parents. I stood frozen, my champagne glass suspended halfway to my mouth. Their house? The house I'd been paying for 5 years? I looked at my mother. She was beaming, tears of joy streaming down her face. She caught my eye for just a second and looked away quickly. That's when I knew. They'd never intended to pay me back. They'd never even seen my payments as loans. I was just the reliable daughter, the one who always came through, the one they could count on to silently fund their lives. I left the reception early, claiming a headache. In my car, I finally let the tears come. 5 years, over $70,000, countless sacrifices, all gone, handed to my sister like a party favor. The next morning, my phone blew up with messages from family members. "Wasn't the wedding beautiful? Aren't you happy for Sarah? What a generous gift from your parents." Nobody mentioned the money. Nobody acknowledged my role in making that generous gift possible. I went to work on Monday like nothing had happened. I smiled at my coworkers. I did my job. But inside, I was making plans. My first stop was the county recorder's office. I needed to see the deed for myself. The clerk handed me the document, and there it was, in black and white. The house had been transferred to Sarah and her husband 2 weeks before the wedding. 2 weeks. They'd known. They'd all known while I was writing that last mortgage payment. Next, I visited a lawyer. Not a family friend, but a tough-looking woman named Patricia Gould, who specialized in what she called financial justice. She looked over my documents, 5 years of bank statements, all showing regular transfers to my parents' mortgage company. "They never discussed this transfer with you?" she asked, her fingers steepled under her chin. "No," I said. "They knew I was sending the money. They never said anything about giving the house away." She nodded slowly. "In the eyes of the court, those regular payments establish a pattern. We can argue you had a reasonable expectation of either repayment or an ownership interest." Then she said the words that would change everything. "We can file a lien against the property." A lien. That meant Sarah and her husband couldn't sell the house. couldn't refinance. The house would be frozen, legally speaking, until this was resolved. I thought about my sister, flighty, irresponsible Sarah, who'd never had to worry about money because someone always bailed her out. I thought about my parents, so quick to give away what wasn't entirely theirs. I said, "File it." The next part was harder. I had to cut my parents off financially. No more mortgage payments, obviously, but also no more helping with property taxes, no more paying for repairs, no more covering their medical bills. The call came exactly 2 weeks later. "Honey," my mother said, her voice tight with anxiety, "the mortgage company called. They said the payment is late." "I know, Mom," I said calmly. Silence. Then, "Well, aren't you going to take care of it?" "No, I'm not." Another silence. Longer this time. "What do you mean? I've always paid it, but the house doesn't belong to you anymore. Why would I pay for Sarah's house?" She sputtered. "But we live here. Your father and I should have thought about that before you signed it away," I said gently. Heard her sharp intake of breath, then the click as she hung up. An hour later, my father called. His voice boomed through the phone, full of the authority I'd grown up fearing. "Your mother is upset," he said. "What's this nonsense about not paying the mortgage?" "It's not nonsense, Dad," I said. "It's reality. I'm not paying for a house that belongs to Sarah." "But we need that payment made," he insisted. "Your mother and I are Sarah's responsibility now," I said. "She has the house, she has the mortgage, she has you." I could hear the confusion in his voice. This wasn't following the script. The reliable Dar was supposed to be reliable. She wasn't supposed to change the rules. "We're family," he said, his voice rising. "Family helps family." "I've been helping," I said quietly, "for 5 years. Now it's someone else's turn." I hung up then, my hands shaking. It was the first time I'd ever stood up to my father. It felt terrifying and liberating. The following week, Sarah showed up at my apartment. She didn't call first, just appeared at my door, her face streaked with tears. "They're going to foreclose," she wailed, pushing past me into my living room. "The bank sent a notice. We're going to lose the house." I closed the door slowly. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Sorry?" she shrieked. "You're sorry? You need to fix this. You always fix things." I looked at my sister, 30 years old, married, supposedly a grown woman, having a temper tantrum in my living room because the world wasn't bending to her will. "I can't fix this, Sarah. It's not my house. It's not my mortgage." "But Mom and Dad live there," she cried. "Where will they go?" I thought about the lake cabin my grandfather had left me, the one place that was truly mine, filled with happy childhood memories, the place my parents had already asked about moving into. "That's not my problem," I said. Her mouth fell open. "How can you be so selfish? After everything Mom and Dad have done for you?" That's when I lost my composure, just for a moment. "After everything they'd done for me," I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. "Let's talk about what I've done for them, Sarah. 5 years of mortgage payments, 5 years of sacrificing my own future so they could keep their house, so you could get your perfect wedding, so you could get your perfect house." She stared at me, her eyes wide. "That was your choice. Nobody forced you." "You're right," I said, my voice steady again. "It was my choice. And now, I'm choosing differently." She left then, slamming my door so hard the pictures rattled on the walls. I stood in the sudden silence, my heart pounding. The battle lines were drawn. The lien was filed the next day. Sarah and her husband were served with papers at their workplace. My parents received the copy in the mail. The phone calls started immediately. Angry, pleading, threatening. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years called to tell me I was breaking up the family, that I was being ungrateful, that family was more important than money. They were right about one thing. It was never about the money. It was about respect. It was about acknowledgement. It was about being seen as something more than the family ATM. My lawyer warned me it would get worse before it got better. She was right. 3 days after the lien was filed, my parents showed up at my workplace. I saw them through the glass doors of the office building, their faces set in determined lines. My receptionist looked nervous. "Your parents are here, Miss Wilkins. They insist on seeing you." I took a deep breath. "Send them in." They marched into my office like they owned the place. My father's face was flushed with anger. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed. "How could you do this to us?" my father demanded, not bothering to close the door. "To your own family?" "Your sister is hysterical," my mother added. "Her husband is talking about leaving her. Are you happy now?" I stood up slowly, facing them across my desk. "No," I said. "I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a long time." "This is about the money?" my father sneered. "You're throwing away your family over money?" "This is about respect," I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to control it. "This is about you giving away something I paid for without even talking to me. This is about you thinking so little of me that you didn't even consider how I might feel." My mother started crying in earnest now. "We didn't think you'd mind. You've always been so generous." "That's the problem," I said. "You didn't think." My father pointed a shaking finger at me. "You will drop this lawsuit. You will apologize to your sister, and you will make the mortgage payments until we figure this out." I looked at him. This man who'd always controlled our family with his temper, his demands, his expectations, and I saw him for what he was, a bully. "No," I said. The word hung in the air between us. Final, absolute. My father's face went from red to purple. "If you don't drop this," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "you're no daughter of mine." I felt the words like a physical blow, but I didn't flinch. If that's the price of finally standing up for myself, then I'll pay it. They left then, my mother sobbing, my father storming ahead of her. My coworkers pretended not to watch as they passed. I closed my office door and leaned against it, my legs shaking. It was done. The line was drawn, and I had crossed it. That night, I lay awake in the dark, thinking about the foreclosure notice on my sister's door, thinking about my parents' threats, thinking about everything I was about to lose, and wondering if what I might gain could possibly be worth it. The eviction notice came on a Tuesday, certified mail. My lawyer forwarded me a copy with a single sentence: "It's happening." I drove by the house that evening after work. The bank's notice was stapled to the front door, bright orange and impossible to miss. Through the living room window, I could see my sister packing boxes. My mother was crying on the sofa. My father stood staring out the window, his shoulders slumped. For a moment, I considered stopping. I considered going in, telling them I would fix everything, making it all go back to normal. Then I remembered the 5 years, the sacrifices, the silence. I kept driving. The legal process moved quickly after that. With the lien in place and the mortgage in default, the bank had the right to foreclose. My lawsuit was secondary. I would get whatever was left after the bank was paid, which wouldn't be much. But that wasn't the point anymore. The call came from my aunt, my mother's sister. "They have nowhere to go," she said, her voice heavy with disapproval. "Your sister's apartment is too small. Your parents have no savings. You've left them with nothing." "I didn't leave them with nothing," I said. "They had a house. They gave it away." "You're being technical," she snapped. "Family doesn't do this to family." I didn't bother arguing. She couldn't understand. None of them could. My parents moved into an extended stay motel the following week. My sister and her husband rented a small apartment on the other side of town. The family was scattered, broken. I told myself I didn't care. I focused on work, on my life, on rebuilding the savings I drained for 5 years. Then, one rainy Thursday night, my security system alerted me. Motion detected at the lake cabin. I pulled up the camera feed on my phone. There was my parents' car in the driveway. My father was at the front door, jiggling the handle. My mother stood behind him, holding an umbrella. My breath caught in my throat. They were trying to break in. I watched, frozen, as my father took a crowbar from his trunk and started working on the door. The camera footage was grainy in the rain, but I could see the determination on his face. For 5 minutes, I watched them try to force their way into my cabin. My cabin. The one place that had always been mine. Then, I made the call I never thought I'd have to make. 911, what's your emergency? I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I gave them the address. I have them on camera right now. The police arrived within 10 minutes. 2 cruisers, lights flashing in the dark, rainy night. I watched on my phone as the officers approached my parents, watched as they handcuffed them, watched as they were put in the back of police cars. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel satisfied. I felt empty. The phone started ringing at 6 a.m. the next morning. First my aunt, then my cousin, then my sister, screaming that I'd had our parents arrested. "They're in jail," she shrieked. "You let them spend the night in jail." "They were breaking into my property," I said calmly. "It's just a cabin. They have nowhere to live." "That doesn't make it their cabin." I hung up on her and turned off my phone. I knew what I had to do. At the courthouse that morning, I met with the prosecutor, a young woman with serious eyes and a no-nonsense manner. "She's a first-time offender," she said, looking over the report, "in their 60s. The public defender will probably get them probation." I nodded. "I don't want to press charges." She looked up, surprised. "You don't?" "No," I said, "but I do want a restraining order." The paperwork was filed by noon. My parents were released with a warning and an order to stay 500 feet from me and my property for 1 year. They didn't call me. I didn't call them. The following month, I put the lake cabin on the market. It sold quickly to a nice young couple with a baby on the way. They promised to take care of the place. With the money from the sale, I made a down payment on a small house in a quiet neighborhood. It had a garden in the back and a porch swing out front. It was everything I'd ever wanted. The day I moved in, I stood in the empty living room, listening to the silence. My silence. My choices. My life. It's been 6 months now. I've settled into my new home, my new life. The family rumors still trickle in through mutual acquaintances. My parents are living with my aunt. My sister's marriage is struggling. Money is tight. People ask me if I'm happy. The truth is, happy isn't the right word. I'm at peace. For the first time in my life, I'm not responsible for anyone but myself. The weight I carried for so long is finally gone. Sometimes I think about reaching out. Sometimes I miss the family I thought I had. But then I remembered the wedding, the betrayal, the broken door at my cabin. My therapist says I need to forgive them for my own sake. Maybe she's right. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back. It doesn't mean forgetting. It means moving forward. Last week, I received a letter from my mother. I recognized her handwriting on the envelope. I left it unopened for 3 days before I finally worked up the courage to read it. She wrote about how much they missed me, how sorry she was, how they never meant to hurt me. She asked if we could talk, if we could be a family again. I read the letter twice, then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'll be ready to answer it. Maybe someday I'll be able to see them without feeling the sting of betrayal, but not yet. For now, I'm learning what it means to put myself first, to build a life on my own terms, to be the author of my own story. The other day, I was working in my garden when I saw a cardinal, bright red against the green leaves. My grandmother always said cardinals were visitors from heaven, checking in on us. I like to think she was watching me. I like to think she understands why I had to do what I did. The family we're born into isn't always the family we need. Sometimes we have to create our own. Sometimes we have to choose ourselves. And sometimes that's the hardest choice of all.